now is move this aside. I had a protective layer here just because we don't want to mess this one up. And last night I stayed up and loosely painted the colors down of the magnolia and outlined everything with the resist, because once you outline with the resist, it has to dry for about half an hour, 40 minutes. So just to show you, I noticed I missed one right here. So I'm going to show you how to do this. And this takes practice getting to know how thick to put this on in a steady hand. And paintbrushes are really important. You have all different styles. You have something really big to do a big outline. This is my favorite brush that looks totally thrashed for details of trees. And this is what I mainly paint with, is dye, silk dye. So it's very liquid and spreads out. And I'll use thickener sometimes to mix with the thickener. It's made from sodium alginate, which is seaweed. So it's nice to have a natural product like that. And then this is the resist, which is probably the one toxic thing I have to use. So when I do use it, I make sure to have plenty of ventilation. And actually that was in the bottle that says solvent, but basically you mix like white gas to make it thinner. And consistency is everything. How thick or thin your stuff is. So anyways, it's hard to talk as I paint. So you guys are welcome to make comments or... So I'm going to start up here and I'm going to put in the sky and I'm going to put in some fog and I'm going to plan for mountains down here, but it's going to sit there and dry, and then I'll go back in and add like a mountain here and some trees coming up. So that's the general plan. And if you notice, I have my paintbrushes already in the colors that they're going to be in, because we don't want to take time to rinse and cross-contaminate. So just to show you here. And if my Gouda lines break in, then oh well, I didn't have time here. So I'm gonna move the water closer. So I thought a deep purple sky, kind of like, actually I took these pictures in my yard in Orleans, and right was as the sun was going down, from a tree that Sue and Malcolm gave me. And I noticed Malcolm is on here tonight. So thank you guys. It survived me moving away and it's really beautiful right now. So you notice I don't want to go too close to my lines, because I want to let the dye carry it up to there, because it's really easy to go over and mess up. And I'm hoping my resist lines will hold, because I put thickener on there to contain some highlights, and it seemed like I had to redo some of my lines, but I'm pretty good at fixing mistakes now too. And what's nice about the silk dye is that it does flow around. So if you do one dark dot, you can push it around. So I'm going to plan for some lightness. So I have some very light color right here. It's all about how wet things take over each other in silk painting. And I also do multiple layers, so you can't ever expect it just to be done with one pass. And just like watercolors, the paints will dry much lighter than they look now. Or I should say dye will dry lighter. It's not paint. There is a silk painting or a medium where they use silk dye instead of paint, and sometimes they call it silk painting, but it really isn't. It doesn't act the same at all. So you can see my silk is starting to get kind of wet and droop. Ideally, I would have this pinned a little better. And Let's see. I've gotten to do this with my art students up on the river a few times. With small schools, they have kind of a bigger budget to spend, or they can afford to do that. And we've also had some grant money that provided money for about 50 students to do a silk painting project. And they called us and offered the money. It was the best thing ever. So you notice I went over my lines right here. So what I'm going to do is just re-wet it right now, and that will just blend away. So you notice we're getting some interesting pores happening around, and the reason why, I had a little bit of thickener in with that light color, and it makes things kind of resist and flow around in an interesting way. And sometimes it makes shapes that you won't ever expect, which is kind of fun. That's why I actually like silk painting, is it lets you do unexpected things. Like with acrylic, you have to, like, every mark is purposeful, and it doesn't really, unless you're using lots of something to make it flow around, it's static and you have to build up your layers. So to get this white to show out, I want to go pretty dark against it. And I don't want to take up too much time doing this, so I'm trying to kind of just be faster than maybe I normally would. And this is like where if you get a call or somebody comes and talks to you, you're like, sorry, I can't stop until I'm down here. You know, you can't leave your project halfway painted. So even if you guys want to, I have to finish this, sorry. But for me, as far as art being fun and loose, it's the landscape style and the mountains and the trees and the mist that are more free flowing and kind of therapeutic, where a lot of the Gouda is like so much pre-planning and stuff. It takes a lot more time and thought and um, energy. And Sue Terrence and I paint together. I don't know if she's she's probably on there, huh? Okay, we are going to go to some mist coming up the valley here. So what I tell people too, it's like, sorry, I'm concentrating on painting, but you can ask me anything and I'll answer. I had a neat experience though with, so I've been getting a couple massages from this lady because anyways, and she's like, now that I know you, I think I have a silk painting of yours that somebody gave me 10 years ago when I lived in New Mexico. And then she sent me a picture, and sure enough, it was one of mine. So it's a small world sometimes. So right here, you can see I'm going to need more color separation because that's white and that was too light sitting against there. But I like what's happening right there. So and we're going to go for some dark blue, wherever that is. So I can kind of loosely plan in where I want a ridge line. So some areas that I have been hiking lately that I'm going to show you next are next to my house where I grew up. There's two creeks on either side, and they're both very rugged and remote with not very many roads going down to them, especially Boise. And so we've been doing some hiking where we have to walk through the brush or thrash through the brush. There's no walking through the brush. Crawling up and over and getting down to these beautiful places on the creek. And now we have these waders that we can put on and being respectful of areas, you know, and hike up the creek a ways and take pictures and see areas that I hadn't seen my whole life that are within a few miles of my home. So that's been pretty amazing. And then also we've been going up to the Smith River drainage, which is probably the most stunning wildflowers that I've seen in my life. So the areas around the North Fork, I'm going to show you Stony Creek. Sorry, I thought I could do this quicker, but and I'm not going to tell you the other one because that's the one you guys have to guess. I almost gave it away. I remember just in time. Happy to see most of my resist lines are showing or holding here. So you notice this brush is like a really fine point. It holds a lot of dye, but you can go into precise areas if your hand is steady. And normally I would probably take the time to repin this, but I'm in a hurry. As I splash a droplet on my flower. I may have to repin it anyways, guys. You can see how wet it gets or how saggy it gets when it gets wet. So I use a stainless steel tacks. Other tacks usually just bend in the wood, so and they rust as well, so you can splurge and buy stainless steel tacks. And if you ever want to fiddle around with this, I order things from Dharma Trading Company out of San Rafael. And also one thing to note about silk painting is that it comes in many different weights and textures, and they all kind of respond differently to the dye. So it's really fun to play around with that. And as you'll see in my slide presentation, in which many of you know, I set the dye, making it permanent in the fabric, so you can turn it into clothing, pillows, all sorts of fun stuff. So right here, I'm just going to use water to kind of shade it and blend it. And this is the super fun thing about silk painting, is just watching the dye flow around and going back and messing with it a little bit, adding a little darkness where you need it and dragging it around. It looks kind of messy, but it will look beautiful at the end. So right there, you can see this breached and went through. So you can kind of fix things as they happen. What I can do to fix that is I'm going to put some thickener so it doesn't keep breaching through. And we might just call this a sample piece. I had to be careful when I was younger because now I mainly like most every piece I do, but back when I didn't, if I didn't like it, I would try to throw it away, but then my mom would dig it back out and hang it up, and then she would brag, "Oh, this is my painting my daughter did." I'm like, no, let's show them that one. But now she has a nice collection. Okay. We gotta hurry up. I have a lot to show you guys.
Amanita, it's been so nice watching you paint. It's meditative for us too.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's been so quiet. I'm like, am I by myself?
Yeah, I've always been intrigued with your mist and wondered how you get it. So I've seen you do a little bit of painting before, but this is a treat to watch the whole background coming to life. Thank you.
Yeah. So we're gonna let this sit well, and then for like half an hour and let it do its thing and see what it looks like when it dries. And then I'll show you how I layer in the other layers here. And then it will look like we're looking a good, 20 miles away. And I am super lucky in Orleans to have a view where I'm looking like 2 miles up the creek drainage and then down through a slot. I'm looking a good 25 miles away down towards Switchpeck and over towards the coast, so I can see like the fog rolling in like a couple hours before it gets to my house, or a sunset through that little view. And I'm moving to a place in McKinleyville with the ocean view from the top floor, and I'm going to paint there, so I'm pretty excited. Lots of good natural light. Maybe I should put on my glasses, see what I'm missing. That definitely helps. See, it looks like I dragged my hand through my Gouda right there. See how that won't go over? Okay, we're gonna have to prop this up. We'll cheat. Sometimes I keep boards around my place just for this. We'll just put that under there. And fill in this. And you'll be amazed on how much lighter this look once it dries. And then we can add some shadows from this one on here, then hopefully disguise some of those leak throughs they're happening because I put thickener down right here to protect the lightness of the magnolia, which I usually don't do. I was just trying to, so live and learn. That's what actually silk painting has been for me, is experimentation, because there wasn't a lot of teachers out there, and it actually it's better because then you find, I'm still finding new ways to do things and products, and just the order of the way you apply them can yield such different results. So also, since that is getting kind of dark there, I can scrub it just a little bit and take some of the color out, but I'm not going to worry too much about it. Okay. Just do one little thing right here. Okay, thank you guys for being so patient with that. And we'll wake back up my computer. Okay. Come on, wake up. Okay, so this, I'm going to show you the calendar that we got to do. And right now, I think Coast Central is pretty much out of them as far as getting a free one at the bank branches. But Humble Outfitters has some on the plaza. And of course, where I work at Jason Forrester State Farm, the heart of Humboldt here, and then also at the Salmon River Outpost in Soames Bar, and at the Syad Valley store, thanks to Jamie and Emily Allen. So we're going to walk through the months here. It's taken a while to go forward. Here. See, I jumped past, sorry, impatient. So here's January. This is actually one of my oldest paintings, and it was actually the back of a Ruana for a lady that custom ordered it. And here's February. And this one went to Happy Camp to Hollis, so it was nice that a friend bought it. This is actually the bottom section of a painting. That was my challenge actually for the calendar, was that they needed horizontal images and I paint in mainly vertical, I realized. So this was actually my favorite painting. This is the scene that I always look for in nature that can't really find. It's really, really hard to find a dogwood branch right next to the water. Usually when it's close to the water, it's the creek dogwoods that don't have the brackets. This was also a custom painting for a friend and very symbolic to her and her parents passing away, and that represented them to her. And mixed flowers, that was a cropped image as well. And you see how much it kind of has to get cropped for the calendar because this is kind of a big panoramic scene that you guys just already saw. And College Cove, kind of put these flowers in the front, and that went to a friend in Santa Fe, or actually Utah. It's one of our favorite places where the salmon comes down and meets the Klamath. A nice fall. And here you see actually where I used all the wax to protect the rocks on the bottom right portion. That's a good way to loosely protect things from the Arcata Marsh. And these are all pictures that I took as well. The first place I lived over on the coast 5 years ago was right next to the marsh, so I got to take lots of walks and pictures. This from Meagle Point up above College Cove. And the funny story about this one is I actually spilt wax all over the bottom right part. I had done it like a couple hours worth of work on the flowers and then ended up having to raise all the flowers up. And I put it aside for a few months and brought it back out. But I really like the results now. So gotta persevere through those mistakes. And December, which you already saw as well. And this one was actually, it's so hard to paint snow. I'm like, I'm never painting snow again. I had to, I put wax resist down to protect the whites. And then I was thinking in my mind, I should probably not put the acrylic paint on top of the wax until it's after it's dry cleaned, because I thought the steaming would remove it. Anyways, it did get removed and I had to spend another 3 hours re-putting it on, but I was in a time crunch. So that's what happens. Live and learn. And another project that was actually the year before, which had to get delayed, is the North Coast Otter project. So 100 of these life-size otters were given to artists who submitted a proposal to paint, and I just found out they are going to be displayed this summer. So some of them already have sponsors or hosts, I should say, businesses that are going to show them around, and there's going to be a whole like scavenger hunt and lots of information. So you should look that up just to find out more, because some of them are just super amazing. So on mine, I did the healthy side choice on this right side, and then I did kind of the toxic side of what could happen if we don't take care of the environment. So you can see kind of the trash at the bottom and the forest fire and the little otters, family fleeing away. So, and I kind of miss them. I like them. So mine's going to be at the Trinidad Eatery in Trinidad, and I actually don't think it has a sponsor yet. So if you want to spend $700 to put your name on there, and then they're actually, all of them are going to be open to bid if you actually want to own one. So a really neat project. Wake up. Okay, see, don't press more than once. So yeah, as I said before, the Pacific dogwood tree is one of my favorites, and it's everyone else's favorite as well, because I usually never have a painting more than a month when I paint these. So you can see everything from the mountains to the creeks. And when I started painting them more, I realized they vary so much in shape So I'm asking you guys if you have any ideas on what causes the variation in the shapes of the bracts. Do you think it's like elevation, sun exposure, soil types, just the history of the tree? So the one on the left, I've never seen one like that with the super pointy tips. And it was actually from a tree on my driveway, and it had fallen over, and then it had kind of one branch had taken off to be the new growth. And it was the one that contained these dogwoods that, if you look how many there are, there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's, yeah, I've never seen that many. And then the one on the right is like super round, and they don't even look like the same tree practically. So I've noticed that the more and more I paint. And question, where's the one on the right from? Does anyone recognize that location? This is going to be a problem if it takes this long to load. Okay, so the first person to guess this location receives a pack of art gift cards. And during our little hiking trip, it was a long hike. The rain thunder showers were, obviously predicted, but that can't, ever stop us. So it started pouring down rain, and we just had to keep moving because we got so wet and so cold by the end. But it creates beautiful soft light on the dogwoods. I realized I needed to buy new outdoor gear. Annie, any guess there?
How about Canyon Creek?
Yes.
Oh,
Who
awesome.
said that?
My name's Barbara.
Yay! You totally got
cool.
it. Yep. So you get the choice. You can either have this scenic card pack, or there's like a Misty-scape one. So it's your choice since you got that. So just chat in or type in what you would like.
Well, thank you. That's so sweet of you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So she's been teaching kids. Yeah.
Okay, so there's more pictures of this trip, and we saw this cute little bear that kept thrashing through the brush. We saw him like 2 or 3 times. He'd like reappear and, oh no, run away again.
So good.
So I did not carry my tripod on this trip, which I'm actually glad for, but lately I have been. And then I was also wondering if you guys think that when you go to higher elevation, usually, like the dogwood are smaller and more compact. So as you see, like there's on one of these, there's only 4 on the right, but then over here you have 8. So it's pretty interesting. And also, just as a photographer standpoint, my college major was photography. So how things look in overcast versus sun. And if you notice, this is very dappled light on the left. The sun's coming from behind, which is usually the most ideal situation when you're photographing plants. And I threw this one in here because this is my driveway in Orleans, or outside of Orleans. So you can see how beautiful it is, the forest, redbud and dogwood. And then dogwood again, love the fall colors that happen. And the little berry clusters. So this is another name the trail. So I'm going to start showing these pictures, and then whoever says the trail gets to win a calendar. So as you can see, I've painted a couple rhododendron paintings based off this location. And this is what you see when you reach the bottom of the hike. And I'll show you how I created this scene. So any guesses? So this is how you can see how I collage in. A lot of times I don't go directly from one photo. I'm combining all my photographs to make the best possible scene. So you may not technically ever quite see that exact thing that I did, but I like playing around and putting like beautiful flowers or plants in the foreground and combining them with my favorite background. And then also sometimes I'm not there at good light, so sometimes I'll make up good lighting. And just as long as you know where your sun source is coming from, you can make it up and create the shadows. See if I missed one. Yes. So this is a good picture too of the hike, that one on the left. So you can see it's just full of wildflowers, and these also, um, all I know is they're burgundy trilliums. I'm sorry, I don't know the technical plant names, but I love the modeling colors on the leaves. And again, the backlighting really illuminates the color that they show. And these also, here again, in the left, you see in full sun, and in the right, full shade. And I actually don't mind the one in the sun in this particular plant, but you notice too, when surfaces are shiny, they reflect the color, and when they're matte, they absorb the color as well. And different colors respond as differently as well.
You have a
So-
trail guess up on the chat. Somebody try to guess the trail.
Oh, not quite, but I can I give you guys hints because I don't want to ruin it. Almost. Keep going north. Go north, everybody. But not by that much. I forget if the next one says it. Nope, not quite. These also were along the trail. So yeah, you go up over, and then you start going down. And yeah, as I was saying, dappled light is my favorite lighting, just because you get the sense of the sunshine, but it's not glaringly bright. And a lot of times you have to adjust your metering down on the camera because it will read all the lightness, and so you really have to photograph for your whites, and then you can always lighten up and dodge the rest. So here's where you come out on the coast. 3 miles later, 2,000 feet down, 2,000 feet down through a diverse forest, the trail drops down to bluffy overlooking rocky outcrops and islands, the shoreline containing boulders of all sizes. The low tide allowed us to explore up the shore to a nice discovery of a beach. The creek turned out to be a decent size, cutting through slate rocks to form some little pools and cascades. Ferns, oxalis, and salmonberries bushes abound. And of course, we stayed there for the sunset, so we got to flashlight out like we normally do. So we just started carrying big, bright flashlights because, magic light happens right before the sun goes down. So that's what you got to do as a photographer. Any other guesses? Couple mile trail above Osagon. Kind of has a cuss word at the beginning of it. Oh. Okay.
So this is Barb. I think I know, but since I already won the first one, I
No,
don't want to
Win
say.
some more. I think Annie knows. Oops, I skipped over it. Here it is.
Oh,
Say it.
there it is.
That's what you were gonna say, right?
It was. I had
All right,
to
you
look
can-
it up. I knew what I was thinking, but I didn't remember the name, so I had to look it up.
Yeah, I love that. I accidentally discovered it one year, just needing to pull over, and I just started walking up the trail, and they're definitely the biggest rhododendrons I've ever seen in my life. And just also, if you don't want to hike all the way down to it is really steep, you can just go over the hill, and it's really amazing. Huge redwoods and rhododendrons 30 feet tall. So I'm going to take you guys on some other hikes. Yeah, so this is summertime. I put a few creeks together. So this is Stony Creek, which leads into the North Fork. And if you look it up, it's right outside of Gasky, just by a mile or so. And so in this picture, it's hard to see, but there's azalea blooming on the upper left, and it's famous for the Darlingtonia, the cobra lily. So there's just hundreds of them, and going right down into the creek. And I don't know what this little purple flower is, but it was pretty cute, growing right off the stony edges. Iris. And I think these are mule's ears and maybe pink phlox. I don't know the scientific names. Also, there was azalea and rhododendron right next to each other. Lady slippers. They're so cute. So that was last summer. And then this was just from like a week ago. And this was a really amazing creek. It had these huge deep pools and then also went pretty shallow too. So if you pay attention to this picture, because in the next picture, I'm standing on the bank opposite, going back the other way. So it's the same pool. A couple hours later, actually, a few hours later, I got lucked out and got a glimmer of sunlight in each one. But you can also see it's still pretty mossy, like the creeks didn't get flushed out this winter, so they already have moss. So out of all the hiking I have done, I have not ever come across this little flower before, and they were all over this creek. So I even asked Annie too. I sent her the picture. I'm like, have you seen these flowers? So anyone know what these are? Okay, so I had to look them up myself too. And they call them, I looked up creek trillium because to me they look like a trillium. And then that popped up the name and it was like a pseudo trillium. And I think they named it after some white guy. So it's like Wallaker or something like that. Like he discovered them, right? No. But they were really cute. Some of them were only like 3 inches tall. So I'll probably have to do a painting of those. Is there a way to not have it fall asleep? So this is just more pictures along that creek. You can see the shelf beds and where you see the bright green back there, that's where these little flowers like to grow, right where it was seeping down. I want to go back here and swim though, that double waterfall pool. It's so amazing. So you can see we are using our tripods and varying shutter speeds. So I have never seen this bush as well. Like it kind of looked like similar to a mock orange, but not really. So those drainages out there have really diverse plants. So I have to look that one up. Does anyone know? Have you seen that plant before, Annie?
Well, I looked it up because I, like you, I was thinking mock orange, but the flowers are larger. And what I was seeing is that it's a bush honeysuckle, but I don't know that for sure. That's
Oh.
just what I was seeing
Well,
from
that makes sense. That it
book.
looks like the flower looks like a honeysuckle.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Beautiful photo. You could paint that one beautifully too.
It's hard to paint little shapes though with silk painting. There's not much to fill in.
Mm-hmm.
And I just randomly take pictures of plants, even it may not be the best lighting, but I'm like, that's a really cool tree shape. I'm going to take that and refer back to that when I want a character tree in my painting. So, and there was also like redwood, fir, dogwood, madrone, alder, black oak. There were so many different kinds of trees on this little creek. So it was getting pretty dark at this point. That's probably like a couple second exposure. And you see the maples with their little lanterns.
Amanita, could I ask you a question? Could I ask you a question? So looking
Absolutely.
at how narrow that creek is and how deep the pools are, and knowing how far you travel up them, how do you get around those deep pools?
The deepest we had to walk was, it went up to like below my waist, but it was pretty mellow. Like there was actually it was a pretty spacious creek, because there's another creek where it wasn't so spacious. So this is from a few weeks ago when we went to the Red Cap in Boise, as I was mentioning, and the main plants here were the Indian rhubarb and the colt's foot and the horsetail too. They were going off. So it was such a warm day too. This was a beautiful day. We just hung out and we actually jumped in too. So you can see Martin in the background taking a picture kneeling down in the water in our new waders. That's the Colt's foot. This was from the summer before, but higher up on Red Cap. And this was, so we normally wouldn't have been able to walk across the creek this time of year. Usually it's much bigger. So this is way upper Red Cape, and this is exactly where you can't go further. And so there is a trail, an old trail, quite a bit higher up along the ridge that I want to go to access above this. And we also didn't have our waders, but yeah, it just went up in different sheer cliffs on each side. And Red Cap is a really big drainage. It's like 20 miles long at least. And this is a much smaller creek, but even more remote. But really interesting. It has lots of slate walls. Colt's foot again. Indian rhubarb. That always amazes me how strong they are. So pretty. So this was the creek where we call it our misadventure, a tale of misadventure and magical moments. Last summer, this was the big trip that Martin took me on, and it was just one of his pipe dreams that he's like, I really want to do this creek. I want to go from Horse Mountain down to the highway. It's 8 miles long. Are you in? Or no, actually, he was like, I want to go alone. Can you pick me up at the bottom? I'm like, no, you can't go alone. Wait till I can go with you. And luckily it rained, so it delayed his trip to when I could go. And so I knew we were going to finish pretty much in the dark, and we had prepared with flashlights and stuff. So I'm going to take you along this trip. So the very top, it was full of this chert rock and tons of azaleas all over, which weren't blooming. So my goal this year is to go back when they are, like mid-June. And we had the best time just going down and taking pictures and using our tripods. And so this is with water. When you're photographing water, this is why it's nice to have a tripod. So on the left, it's like 1/60th of a second where you're stopping a lot of the water motion. It's still a little bit blurry, but then over on the right, it's the same photo with half a second. And then we may play around and take pictures in between. So like every picture looks a little different. And oftentimes when there's too much white, especially in a waterfall, it's really hard to photograph because you need that darkness to show. So yeah, it was just this lush canyon going down, and the creek didn't seem that big. Here we are at lunchtime having our picnic, and you can see by my gear, it was not near compared to what I have now. I just had these like pull-on things and one ended up breaking, and it was actually really lucky. It was a warm night and we had lots of food. So here you can see I just scramble around. So yeah, we realized we were going to be finishing way late at this point because you could tell by the satellite. And then we reached this canyony section where the pools were like 15 feet deep down there, and it was starting to get a little dark, and we just started scrambling on deer trails and backtracking and going around and over a log jam, and luckily getting down off that kind of dangerous section before it got dark. But then it got dark and we realized we still had like miles to go. So it came to the point of just moving slowly and not getting hurt and doing anything stupid. And I think the scariest point of our time of my trip was when Martin and I were a teensy bit separated because he was going a lower route and I was going up. And then I was sliding down this little chute. And then I look over at the sword fern and there's a huge wasp nest, like huge, with like 15 of them on the outside. And I wasn't quite sure where Martin was, so I kind of had to stay right there so he didn't come down that way. But it was, I think, the scariest moment for me. And yeah, we finally made it. I think I shined the flashlight up and I saw a picnic table and realized we were at the campground, and then we were taking bets, like, what time do you think it is? And I think we said 1:30 and 1:40, and we got back to the car and it was 4 o'clock. And I was just like, oh, I hope my mom didn't call the sheriff. She knew I was going out here. And then when I checked my messages, of course, they were from her. Should I be worried? Should I call in? But It's all, the worst part was we actually had a shuttle, so then I had to drive Martin back up to the top and drive home separately at dawn to Trinidad. So we made it though and survived to tell about it. And we want to do it again, but then stay 2 nights along it so we can do it more leisurely. And I threw a few pictures in here of autumn creeks. They're very different places, but so on the left is Boise Creek. And that's probably about 18-foot waterfall. It's kind of hard to see the perspective. And on the right, this is a fork of the Smith. And these are both Boise last fall. Back to the east fork of the Willow Creek. And this, like, anyone could really go to the campground and walk up and enjoy this creek. It's really beautiful. The other one I didn't divulge where it was because it was a little too special, but so I think the bush in the middle is the one I always forget the name of. It might be like, or some type of Aurelia or black cohosh, the one with the purple berries too. So this is our upgraded gear now. We bought these fisherman waders, and I also have the raincoat too, and they just like keep you so warm and comfy. And I don't care what we look like. And then I did just like a presentation of plants, just random plants that I've taken around. So this is the Fawn Lily. And they also have a little variant. Sometimes they have like the purpley color in the leaves, and they'll have like 3 flowers on them. And sometimes they're just little single ones with flowers. Am I too quiet? Yeah. And the oxalis. So I noticed like over on the coast, they have, you know, like kind of more white flowers, and then there'll be more pink in other regions. A red bud, and I don't know what, but I love the lighting on it. So this was, the left one's on the Klamath River just a couple weeks ago, and then the one on the right is actually by College Cove. Coastal plant. And the fern, and the fetid adder's tongue is on the right. Stinky little plant. And I believe that's a thimbleberry on the left. I get thimble and salmonberry, yeah, because they're white. Salmonberry's pink. And the tiger lily. I don't know what these are. I've seen these in the in the redwood forest on the left, but I'd have to look them up. So I was kind of wondering if any of you knew. And then the bush on the right as well.
That's a clintonia. Clintonia is on your left and the twinberry's on your right.
A twinberry?
Yeah.
Okay.
Twin blooms, the blooms from the twinberry.
Oh, because there's 2 together all
Yeah.
the time?
Yes.
Oh, cute. And the skunk cabbage and the forget-me-not. I love the little blue flowers. Those are so pretty. Actually, you notice I put those in a lot of my background ones. The Douglas iris on the left. Oh, I think we should rename it. That's just, it needs a prettier name. And the wild rose. And so I went on this hike up by Port Orford. We went out on the bluff, and there was all these cute little stunted plants because it's so incredibly windy there. So nothing was over like 3 inches, even like the little irises too. It was pretty cute. So a delphinium, and then the cat's ears, which are really pretty intricate when you look up close. And on the left, that was actually from high elevation, the Indian paintbrush on the Canyon Creek, and this was right on the beach, the wild strawberries and some type of lupiny thing. And I don't know how these got here, but this is right by my house up on Redcap, and they always bloom in late March, and they're only in this one spot. And I know there used to be some homesteads out there, so I'm wondering if this is like one that has just survived and been there, if it's actually a wild lupin, because I haven't really seen them anywhere else, but they've been there my whole life really. So They're getting up there. And then this is actually named from Orleans because it's very specific to Orleans. And then even if you go up Ishy Pishy Road where the soil's more red, they turn into a more goldeny brown color. So it's pretty interesting. You just go right across the river like 2 or 3 miles apart and they look different. So here you can see the difference. The Indian paintbrush. And hound's tooth or something like that on the left. So again, I think it deserves a prettier name. I love these ones. They're one of the first wildflowers in the forest. And then driving over Bald Hills, which I just drove over a few weeks ago, and it's going to be a better lupin year than last year, but still sometimes not the same as several years ago. And then the Fawn Lily again, and some vine maple. So thank you guys for hanging in there for the slideshow. And how are we doing on time?
8:02.
Oh, good. I killed an hour? All right. All right, well, thank you guys for joining me. As you can see, this takes quite a while to dry. So sometimes I have like a little heater going or that, but just to show you a little bit on there, I'm gonna grab a quick, just a little texture brush. And it will probably blur out with time. I just want to show you guys a little bit. So I can go in there while it's wet and kind of just add some loose trees and texture and let them kind of dry more in random ways. So it'll give the illusion of distant trees just with, that's why I love this brush. And I bought it in Europe years ago and I don't know where to get another one. So once in a while I'll lose it. Like, where's my magical tree brush? So I can go along and feather to make bigger trees in the foreground, and I'll put like a big one, you know, coming up over here. You can see the way it's responding that it is more dry down at the bottom. And I'll just put some green on a leaf so you guys can see how that will brighten up too. So I've put a little bit of, so when I go and put detail, I won't just paint in the whole thing. I'll add some texture out there. Okay, we'll look for this one later. I'll post it on Facebook and you guys can see if it actually turned out decent by the end. Thank you guys so much for joining me. And does anyone have any comments, questions?
Amanita, I think you are so masterful as an artist and also as a teacher.
Well, thank you so much.
Likewise, Amanita, it was just wonderful to have you share your life in nature as well as your art. You know, it's a wonderful combination. There are people who hike and there are people who do art, but you combine them both into a life that's just wonderful. And I'm so grateful we had that chance to glimpse that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
All right. I have lots more adventures to take and I feel like I have tons of painting or, you know, resources to create paintings now and inspiration. So that's been a good year. I know it's been a hard year for a lot of people, but I think art plays a very critical role in all this because it gives us an escape, but also if you're stuck in your houses, it gives you also that escape as well. If you have just a beautiful piece of artwork that you enjoy, just being able to appreciate that and transport yourself to a more beautiful spot.
It's so wonderful you share that. And this year you have paintings on display at Coast Central, right? If people are looking for your work locally.
Yep, it's still there, surprisingly enough. So yeah, but at the Eureka F Street locations, the downtown location is where I have my favorite work, I would say, and then also at the Gentoli Arcata. And then after that, I'll either be moving it around town or have it where I work at Jason Forrester's State Farm office. So
And then I notice you do post your works on your Facebook page for Amanita Mollier Silk Painter. Is that
I
how
do. Sometimes I'm sloppy about sharing it to my silk painting page,
Okay.
so, or look under my name as well. So,
Yeah, so they can find you on Facebook too.
yep. Just
I
under
know
my
I want to
name.
see a lot more, so that's why I'm asking. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank you so much. Any
thank
other
you.
questions or comments before we let Amanita go? This was just so wonderful. I appreciate it so much. And then also to mention for the rest of the week, there'll be a Zoom meeting every night that shows you trails and plants and talks about soils, maybe answers some of those wonderful observation comments that Amanita had about the difference between plants' shape in the dogwoods when they grow in different areas. So that's all on the website, northcoastcnps.org. Okay, thank you so much
you.
for joining us. That was wonderful, Amanita.
Yes, and I could either leave those prizes here at the Ink People or have them in Arcata at State Farm for my prize winner. We just need to connect with her before she leaves.
You can leave them at the Ink People.
Okay, great.
That
We'll
would be
do.
great. Thank you so much. And it was really fun to recognize those places. And,
Yeah,
yeah, and I just feel lucky to have been in those wonderful places.
for sure.
That was great.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Okay, good night. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Amanita.
Thank you all for attending.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that was good timing. I hadn't timed it, of course, by doing a pre-run. I'm like, I hope I don't have 15, 20 minutes to kill.